I wanted to ask you about the overlap between natural hygiene and what now is called raw vegan. Raw vegan, that wasn't even a term, several decades ago. But this fruit-based approach of to nutrition and slash raw vegan, what's the overlap between that and natural hygiene?
It's a great question. Since the main tenets of natural hygiene are the body is a self healer, and when we get out of the way, the body can heal, and it gives you different ways to get out of your own way. One of them is with food. So there's a huge overlap between natural hygiene and raw veganism, where we're all just removing the burden of cooked animal-based foods. So that most natural hygienists agree on. However, it does get you can read some of Shelton's books, and he writes about cottage cheese. He writes about eggs. He writes about milk
Cheese.
because these are things that they were eating 100 years ago that were actually better quality than they are now. I know, like, I don't want
Sure.
even the most grass-fed milk. I have no need for milk in my life.
It wasn't pasteurized even then.
Right, right. But if I'm going to drink milk, it's from a cow. It will for sure be unpasteurized,
Right,
raw,
right,
like
right.
quality.
Changes the chemistry dramatically.
Yeah. So we just have to understand that when these people were writing in the 1800s and the early 1900s, they were sort of writing to the commoner who ate a lot of cheese, and maybe there was no good infrastructure to get pineapples up to Minnesota or whatever.
Right.
So you got to just keep in mind that when you read some of the old natural hygiene texts, they're going to talk about animal-based foods and even incorporate them in some of their meal plans. But what you should take away is
Okay.
the philosophy of food combining, the philosophy of, and that's another thing that raw vegan kind of overlaps with. The raw vegans know the value of mono meals. They know the value of eating one fruit until you're satisfied because that's what the gut loves the best. That's what's the most natural. It's not very common to find a banana tree next to a starfruit tree and just like have both of them. You're
But
probably going to
it's
find
good
one.
food combining to do that. In other words, monomeal, that's the ideal food combining.
Yes.
It's not, you're not doing any food combining with other things.
Yeah. And calling back to like the ingredients lists, just, you can, some breakfasts, whatever, it's like a little packaged food. It might have 30 ingredients in it. You compare that to a one ingredient meal, bananas. It's so remarkably different on our digestive system that that's a way to remove the burden. So that's what raw veganism, I think, overlaps with natural hygiene, is that we recognize the power of what we put in our mouths. We recognize the power that we have as individuals, that it's up to us to be healthy. That it's no one else's responsibility, right? Whereas the mainstream and standard American lifestyle, they love to pin the blame on you. Oh, you need to wear a mask because you're going to get me sick. Bro, look what's in your shopping cart. You think I have an effect on what's going to make you sick? Like, we all have the power to put anything we want in our mouth or not. So I think that that's probably the main overlap
Mm.
is the food aspect, and to keep the internal terrain clean. So hygiene just means cleanliness, right? When you eat a
Okay.
banana, it's clean. Your poop is clean. It doesn't stink. It doesn't leave, even
Okay.
residue on the paper sometimes. Like, people have a hard time believing this, but when you start eating fresh, raw, ripe, juicy fruit, like, your poop doesn't stink as much, and everything's just cleaner. So
Great.
it's an internal cleanliness. It's an internal hygiene. That's, I
Okay.
think, is the main overlap.
That's why it's called toxemia explained. It's talking about toxicity. It's talking about when the body is overloaded with all these toxic materials and it becomes like a sludge and it's literally dirty and that's when the cells can't breathe and you
And
start to have
specifically the blood, because emia is a suffix for blood.
okay.
Hypoglycemia, leukemia, toxemia. Anytime you see emia, it just means of blood. So
Okay.
put those words together. Emia is toxic blood. So yes, you're right. And blood delivers to all of our cells. So you're totally right that, yes, they're just recognizing that we're creating this acidic, sludgy, fatty, cholesterol laden, slow blood system that is
Wow.
then poisoning the rest of our body. And if you would just allow the body to regenerate itself, you know how we rebuild blood all the time. You could lose a couple pints of blood and tomorrow it'll be fine. So, and what is blood mostly? Water. What are fruits mostly? Water, right? So,
Hmm.
yes, it's the internal hygiene is turned on when we stop eating greasy, salty, cooked food that, hey, that stuff's great in survival mode. You know, I'm trapped in a tundra and I got some packets of granola and like potatoes to cook. Like, yeah, I'm gonna eat those. Are you kidding me? Survival mode. Or if
I
I the only thing I can find is some fish in a river, it's like, am I gonna eat that? And I'm starving? Yeah, probably. You know,
yeah.
but I'm not in survival mode. I don't need to.
For alcohol, that's why they used to ferment alcohol because it would store through the winter.
Yeah, and like sauerkraut and kimchi, anything fermented, you know, that way, like a probiotic or whatever that they call it. That's all for storage too. That's all for preservation. That's not for the health benefit. That's just so that it wouldn't go bad.
Hmm.
Like, can't eat the cabbage fresh all the time. So